Hello. I'm going to be reviewing the Goulet Nibs today. These are nibs that can be added on to a regular fountain pen. They're just sold as plain nibs like this. They come in several different colors. You can find them. These are the silver ones. They're all stainless steel nibs, by the way. They have, oh boy, they have gold colored nibs, which are sort of two-tone-ish. And now they recently came out with black colored nibs. And these nibs are made by the Yovo company. You'll find these same nibs on a lot of different fountain pens, including the Edison pens. And I just thought it'd be interesting because here's what I like about these Goulet nibs. I can have a pen, and I can have up to 6 different types of nib in it, plus the one that the pen comes with. You know, this, for example, is a Noodler's pen. I can put the different Noodler's nibs in it. I can put in these. So fewer pens, more writing possibilities. Some people have found that they don't like the Noodler's pens, and I have made some remarks before about the Noodler's non-flex nibs that weren't very complimentary. The Goulet nibs are a good way to get better writing out of a Noodler's pen. So that didn't sound real enthusiastic, but here's what is enthusiastic. I'm going to struggle a little bit with this, but I'm going to continue recording with that camera there. I'm going to use, I'm looking at my computer now, make sure I get this in frame. I'm going to use this guy. This is a little tool I bought to help me teach. It's a document camera. And I'm going to use this instead of my usual camera for recording the writing samples. But because I'm continuing to record on the camera I'm pointing to, I should be able to do some cuts and look up and such. But what I have to train myself to do, I'm in focus right now, leaned back against the chair. Now I'm out of focus. So this will be a little bit of a learning experience for me too. I intentionally set it this way so that I would know I'm in focus when I lean back, because I won't be able to preview what I see on that camera on the computer when I have this hooked up. So that will be interesting. I'm going to record all of this with let's see, Diatramentus cucumber ink, which smells nothing like cucumbers, but it does have a nice smell to it. And I'm going to demonstrate the Goulet nibs. I found a variety of pens here. I'm only going to actually ink up one of them, but I have a TWSBI 700, VAC 700. I have a Jinhao 750. Sorry, I had to look. I didn't remember what his number was. I have a Noodler's ink, Conrad, and I guess another Noodler's Conrad. So I don't know why I have two. So yeah. Anyway, so I'll be back in a moment. Start talking about the writing sample and switching back and forth between writing and camera. So the first thing I'd like to talk about here is exactly how do we get a Goulet nib in. So I set this bottle of ink to the side so I don't have a disaster. All these pens are friction fit. If you have a different pen, you might have to do something a bit more exotic. Let's see here, getting in focus. But what you do is, with all these pens, you grip, pull out the feed, and the nib. Same thing here with the Jinhao, which is the pen I will be demonstrating this with. Grip and pull it out. So I'm going to leave the Jinhao disassembled for a moment, but by the way, thing to be cautious of, which the Jinhao has this characteristic, is that some of these openings have a special shape designed specifically for the feed, and the pen, they have a special shape for the feed and the nib to fit in, and they only fit in one way. So that's something to watch out for on the Jinhao, and I just noticed on the TWSBI as well. So make sure when you do this that they actually do fit, because fountain pens don't like to be forced into anything. Alright, so I'm leaving the Jinhao taken apart, and I'll just briefly show you on this old Noodler's pen. Again, this one's a little different. What I discovered with, I'm sorry, I'm out of focus. This one is a little different. What I discovered with the Noodler's pens is that Noodler's pens, because they have an ebonite feed that's sort of unique, I found that, yeah, I could usually get them to write with the Goulet nibs, but they did so much better after I heat set them. So to, again, these nibs and feed, you just pull, it's friction fit. And then Conrad doesn't have a right way to put it in. The Ahab, if you try this with an Ahab, does, but friction fit. And you know, like I said, if you heat set the Noodler's nib, it works a lot better. Okay, so now let's ink up Jinhao. I'm going to start with the extra fine nib, and I'm going to work my way upwards. Now I'm thinking this is kind of a pale ink, but it may actually show the shading quite well. What I can't convey in this video format is the smell of the ink. And as I said, it's a nice smell. It just really doesn't smell like the cucumbers that grow in my garden. So we'll start with our extra fine nib. We'll write an EF so I know what the heck I'm using. And I need a short phrase. What's a good short phrase? And that's an extra fine nib. Now, down at the bottom of the page, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to start a table here. I'm going to do a vertical line, a horizontal line, and some diagonal lines. I guess I could have just done a plus. And just because I have room, I'm going to do one of those things. Now, the trouble with this is to take out this nib and feed. I'm going to end up with cucumber colored fingers by the time this is all done. And to resaturate the feed might take a little bit of time, which I will have to edit out of the video. Also be sure, and this is why I picked this particular pen, some pens, the converter actually fits into the feed, sort of, and the feed holds it in place. So that's one of the reasons I picked this particular pen. All right, so now I have in the fine nib. So F. Now to my uneducated eye, that looks about the same, but maybe I picked the wrong ink, or maybe the difference is more subtle. I'm not noticing any scratchiness, which is good. I don't like scratchiness, and it's just working. I didn't notice scratchiness with the extra fine nib either. These are definitely not flex nibs. These are nails. Do not try to flex them. It's just going to be an expensive repair for you. Alright, more ink mess on my fingers. Cucumber scented goodness. Now I'm going to put the medium nib in. Now, when I look at them, I don't actually even see visually much difference between the fine and the extra fine. The medium actually does look a little bit thicker, just looking at the tipping material. So let's hope I can see some variation here. Okay, remember I said the feed might have some issues? There we go. Okay, M. Now that does look a little thicker to me. Not a lot thicker. And let's look down at the writing sample. So this is the medium nib. Straight down, horizontal, X, and whatever that is. Alright, moving on. This is going fast now. Pull out the nib and feed. Make more inky mess on my table. I'm putting in the broad nib. My feed getting saturated again. Pen is writing, so let's try it with the broad nib. Broad. Now I feel the difference there. The ink is definitely pooling on top of the paper with this one. I'm tempted to say that there's more difference between this nib and the others than there is between the other three. So down here, we'll do a B, the vertical line, the horizontal line, the X, the whatever this is. Nice flow, but that has just as much to do with the feed as it does with the nib. Now this is a 1.1 millimeter stub nib. So we'll do the straight, we'll do the, what is this one? Whoops. How about we saturate the feed? One thing I kind of like is they have the very subtle branding on the nib. I'll do a close-up here. Well, actually, you probably saw the close-up of all the nibs together already. But I'll do the very subtle branding, and they put the size right there by the brand. And I haven't found that it gets covered up in any of the pens I use this in. Okay, so 1.1. So a little wider than the broad, but not too bad. Now, what you may not know is that my real camera has just shut off because you can only record so long with a DSLR before the sensor overheats, and that's what's happened. So you won't see my face for a bit here. I might turn it on to do a conclusion. But anyway, this is a 1.1 millimeter stub, straight down. Do you see why I wanted to do the vertical and horizontal? And of course, diagonals, and whatever this is. A 1.1 millimeter stub is a very nice nib if you want to do calligraphy, but you still want to do regular writing. It's still small enough that you can write on regular notebook paper without too much issue. Now, when you get to the 1.5 millimeter, which is my last one, now you have a very thick thing, and it's not going to look as good. I have to make my letters very loopy to see all their loops and such. This is not as much of a regular writing nib. It's more of just a, well, calligraphy nib. Okay, so our 1.5 millimeter stub nib. Yeah, do you see how much wider that is? See, I can't even see the inside of the E there. And down here, this is a 1.5 millimeter. So if we take a look here, I don't see much difference between the extra fine and the fine, or the medium. Well, okay, I take that back. The medium does look a little bit thicker. Where I really start seeing an obvious difference, though, to my eye, is with the broad. And then, of course, the stubs are wider yet. And by the way, these were flesh colored before I started this video. Up here on the writing sample, again, I noticed that if I really am looking for it, and I'm not sure how much of this is just me trying to convince myself, but up here it definitely is finer, but it gets thicker as you go down. Every one of these flows just fine. I don't have problems with that. I don't have problems with scratchiness. These are very well polished. I will note, if this is important to you, the stub nibs, your stub nibs have no tipping on them. That's just the way they are. And I suppose that means eventually they'll wear down because the tipping is supposed to be very hard and help protect the end, but you know, it is what it is. So since we're doing this really super close up, extra fine, fine, medium, broad, 1.1, 1.5. Let's do a quick close up down here. I don't know if that's as good as it's going to get or not, but we have our extra fine, fine, medium, broad, 1.1, and 1.5. So one of the lessons I've learned from this is I either need to get married or find somebody who's as freaky about fountain pens as me to help me run the camera if I'm going to do it this way. But I know this ran extra long. I'm almost going to what the heck, let's call this a rodeo. Anyway, I hope this gave you an idea of some of the different nibs that you can use. This is a number 6 nib. Generally what that means is across the shoulders of the nib, you get the idea. Across the shoulders of the nib it's supposed to be 6 millimeters. 6 millimeters or not? Sure looks like 6 millimeters to me. So that's a number 6 nib. So if your pen uses a number 6 nib, you can use these Goulet nibs. You will find some have a slightly different shape. So just because I can use a Goulet nib in a pen doesn't mean I can necessarily put a different nib in. So for example, the flex nibs from the Noodler's pens will not work on all of them. They just have a slightly different shape. And that's something you're just going to have to experiment with. I think Goulet explains it the best on their website, what pens work with what, but experiment. I had luck, although I prefer the Monteverde nib. I was able to use it with the Monteverde pens that have the number 6 nib. Twisby, Jinhao, Noodlers, that's what I've experimented. Some people have tried them on the Edison pens. I don't know why, because it's the same nib, but they have. And with good luck. So, experiment. That's part of the fun of this hobby. So, I hope that was useful. I hope it was interesting. I hope I'm in focus right now. And we'll see you later.